All right, what's going on, Safe House family? Look, welcome to another episode of Fresh Fridays. Yes, so we're looking to go into this weekend and even next week with a freshly renewed mind, with a freshly renewed heart, and most importantly, a freshly renewed spirit. Yes. Today I want to talk to you about something that I think is really affecting our lives and also affecting our communities, and that is busyness. Yes, hurriness. Yes, because I think as a society, we found ourselves with a spirit of busyness, working ourselves beyond our limits. And I hate to even say this, but working ourselves into an early grave, right? And I got to be the first to admit, I was a person that I did not know how to handle idle time. So in my life, anytime that I wasn't doing anything, anytime that I wasn't busy, anytime that I didn't have that feeling like I needed to hurry, like I needed to do something. I would try to, fill that empty time with something unnecessary or something that I think I needed to do. And that was never necessarily the case because I didn't know how to deal with, just being still. And that's one thing that God is calling us to do within our lives is to just be still. Just be still. Just because you have a empty space on your calendar doesn't mean that you have to fill it with something. Just because you have an hour or two, not to do anything doesn't mean you have to go out there looking for something to do. No, you have to master the art of being still, being in the presence of God, allowing him to come into your life. You feel what I'm saying? Allowing you to be in the presence of him. You don't have to fill it with anything. And that was my problem because I didn't know how to deal with that idle time. I didn't know how to just be still. I always felt like I had to do something. So I always found myself, working 2 or 3 jobs, just because I didn't know how to be still in those moments. I always felt like I had to do something. Being in the military, working 2 or 3 jobs outside of the military, cutting hair, I just always found something to do, with my idle time until I got to a point in my life where I realized, you know what? I don't have to do those things. So now when I have free time to myself, I spend that time with myself. I spend that time in the presence of God. I spend that time reading. I spend that time praying, worshiping, or just watching movies, just doing something where I'm not doing the most or doing things for other people. I just found myself in his presence, in the house, just relaxing, not doing anything. Because believe it or not, I want you to understand this. God wants you to slow down. Yes, he wants you to slow down. Because nowadays, people associate slowness with lack of progression. I don't understand that. People associate slowness with lack of progression. Or they associate slowness with lack of success. So meaning if you're not, doing the most in your life, that you're not being productive, or you're not progressing, or that you're not being as successful as you should be. And I want to tell you right now, that is a false narrative to go by because it's not true. Even God sees things in a different way. Because God sees slowness, he associates that with patience. God associates slowness with patience. I want you to think about that. So I want to read you a verse from Proverbs 16, verse 32, and it says this: "It is better to be patient than powerful. It is better to have self-control than to go out and conquer a city." So when you look at our lives right now and you apply that verse to our lives, it is better to be patient than to go out and do 1,000 things at one time, stressing yourself out, because that's what's essentially going to happen. When you go out there into the world and you start doing 1,000 things at one time, the only thing that you're going to get back, you might be successful, that's true. But now you're putting yourself in a position where you have all of this burden on you. Now you have all of this worry on you. Now you have all of this stress on you. And that's not what God was trying to do. Then when you look at the second part of that verse, it's pretty much saying this in our lives: it is better to be obedient and wait for God to tell you to make a move. So it is better to be obedient. It is better to have self-control than to go out and conquer all of these different tasks in your lives that you don't have to do right now. Because when you look at the ministry of Jesus, right, he did things at specific times. He didn't do things at one time. No, he didn't do 1,000 things at one time. No, he did things at specific times. Even when it came to the death of Lazarus, when Lazarus died, he didn't immediately go and bring him back from the dead. No, he waited like 2 days before he even went. Because he already knew, I can't do all of these things. Even though he could, I don't need to do all of these things at one time. And it's things right now that they need to see in my patience. It's things that they need to see in his patience. So even looking at his ministry, he understood that he has a divine timeline, that he has to be patient to accomplish all of these things. And even in his slowness, he was the most productive person on this earth. And we are called in his likeness. So if we're called in his likeness, we need to be able to adopt the attitude of operating at a slower pace than we do, not putting all of these things on ourselves that are going to easily burden us, that are going to easily stress us, that are going to easily worry us later on down the line. No. So now I want to get into how do we eliminate all of that busyness that is in our lives? The first thing, I want you to write this down. Do not commit to false starts. Proverbs 19:2, it says this: enthusiasm without knowledge is no good. Haste makes mistakes. So you have to understand this. When you do things too quickly, you're bound to make mistakes later on down the line. And those are mistakes that you don't really want to, you don't want to make, because you're going to have to pay for them later on. You are. Because I want you to picture this in your life as well. God may be calling you to a position. He may be calling you to a situation in your life that is going to require you to have initial patience. That is going to require you to have initial patience. But if you take it upon yourself to commit to a false start, doing things before his timeline, what you fail to realize is he may have been trying to clear a path of burdens that were going to be placed on top of you going down that path. But you not being patient, being impatient in that situation that God was calling you to be patient in, you committed to a false start. You jumped in front of his timeline. And so now you found yourself in a position where you're heavily burdened. Now you found yourself in a position where you're constantly stressed out, where you're constantly worried. And that's not what God was calling you to. So we don't need to commit to false starts within our lives. No, slow down. Be patient. Whatever situation God is calling you to, trust and believe that he's calling you to that situation where it's going to require you to have initial patience. Number 2, focus on the things that are important. John Ortberg, in the book called Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is an amazing book I recommend everybody to go get, he said this. He said, slow down and simplify our lives around what really matters, right? So, adding that to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1, it says this: there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. Look, we need to put ourselves in a position where we're focusing on the things that are important in our lives. And I know that's going to vary amongst different people, because what I may think is important, another person may think that's, it's not important to them. Or what that person may think is important, it may not be important to another person. So we need to be able to do a self-evaluation and realize what is important in our lives. Because those are the things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis. For some of you, it may be your family, your wife, your kids, other relatives within your life, or it may be your job. It may be school. If these things are important to you, these are the things that you need to focus on. These are the things that you need to focus on. Lord willing, he's going to allow you to do all of the other things that you need to do at a later time. Lord willing. Lord willing, he's going to allow you to do those things at a later time. There's no need to overburden yourself with unnecessary things that don't need to be done right now. And I understand what scriptures say. Why put off tomorrow what you can do today? I understand all of these things. But Lord willing, God will allow you to do those things at another time. He will. He will allow you to do those things at a later time. Right now, he wants you to be able to focus on the things that are important, the things that he needs you to focus on. And if need be, please sit down in prayer. God, what is it that I need to focus on right now? Because I don't want to overload myself with things that are going to take my time away from you, or that's going to take my time away from the things that you have deemed important inside of my life. You need to be able to seek him. Lastly, one of the most important ones of all, learning to say no. And I understand that is the hardest thing for a lot of us, especially people that have a spirit of people pleasing. It is hard for you to say no. It is. I was that individual. I did not know how to say no. Anytime anybody asks me for anything, yeah, I got you. Don't worry about it. I got it. Because I didn't know how to say no. I was a people pleaser times 1,000. Times 1,000. You understand me? I would put myself in a position that will overly stress me out, that will overly burden me. You know, I'm doing 1,000 things at one time in my life, then adding somebody else's stuff. I want you to understand that it is okay to say no. You don't have to take on other people's problems. You don't have to take on other people's situations, especially if you're already overly burdened with your own problems, with your own life, with your own situation. Why add somebody else's burdens to your own? No, you don't have to do that. It's okay to say no. If you want to if you want to pick a day out of your life to take a break from everything, not doing anything for anybody else, but doing everything for yourself, that is okay. It is okay to say, nah, look, you know what? I'm taking this day for myself. This is a self-love and this is a self-care day for me. I'm not doing nothing for anybody. It's okay to say that. It's okay. And you don't have to feel bad for saying it. I do it all the time. I do it because I learned that if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be able to properly take care of everybody else that may need me. I'm not going to be any good for my children. I'm not going to be any good for the people that I pray with. I'm not going to be any good for my job. I'm not going to be good for anybody. So I have to learn to take care of me. I have to learn to be in the presence of God so that he can lead me properly, so that I can be able to help lead other people properly. You see what I'm saying? So you have to learn to say no. It is okay. And we have to get to a point in our lives where we are truly eliminating the busyness inside of our lives. We have to get that false narrative out of our head that sit there and say, hey, if I'm not busy, or if my life is too slow, then I'm not being successful. If my life is too slow, then I'm not progressing. I'm not being productive within my life, because that is a false narrative. Don't let anybody convince you that you have to be overly busy to be successful. No, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. Because God is calling us to a slower pace within our lives. We're called in his likeness. So I promise you, if you slow down within your life, watch how more productive you're going to be in your life. All right. So I hope that message was for somebody today, man. I just want y'all to know I love y'all and y'all have a blessed day. All right.